Topping today's news, a suspect arrested in the murder of a woman found at the South Beach canals on Wednesday. Environmentalists visit the site of the proposed RCI-PI Beach Club project. Close to 50 Cubans deported back to Havana, and the opposition not in support of changes to the law reform bill. This is your Jcn Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. Police have officially identified the country's 36th homicide victim on Wednesday evening. A woman believed to be in her early 30s, mid-40s, was found submerged in waters in the South Beach canals by a group of males swimming in that area. Divers from the Marine Support Unit retrieved the body from the water, where EMS found no signs of life. Police told reporters on the scene that the woman was believed to be in the water for less than 24 hours. She was fully clothed. However, there were gunshot injuries to the upper body. Police have identified the victim as 42-year-old Yinka Maria Strawn of South Beach. Police also confirming that they have arrested a suspect they believe to be responsible for this killing. A 34-year-old male was arrested shortly after 1 p.m. this afternoon in the western area of New Providence. Investigations into this latest homicide continue. The Office of the Spouse of the Prime Minister remains committed to doing its part in raising public awareness and sensitivity to the issues of gender-based and domestic violence. On the heels of the gruesome discovery of a mother and her daughter found dead in an apartment on Ross Corner in a double homicide this past Friday, and with the most recent discovery on Wednesday afternoon of the bullet-riddled body of a female pulled from waters of the South Beach canals, the Office of the Spouse says these incidents speaks to a sharp deterioration in relationship between men and women in the country and threatens the social stability. While expressing heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims of these unspeakable acts of violence, in an overnight statement, the Office of the Spouse says as a society there must be a change in course if we hope to build a strong, stable, safe and secure society to pass on to future generations. Minister of State for the Legal Affairs and Member of Parliament for Centerville, Jomo Campbell, also speaking out on the issue of violence in the country. The mother and daughter, a duo found dead in an apartment on Ross Corner, were members of the state minister's constituency. He offered his heartfelt condolences to the family.
We are living in times when we cannot and should not take the gift of another day of being healthy and strong for granted. I'm fully cognizant that without the support of the people in Centerville, I would not have the opportunity to be in this honorable place. I wish to extend sincere condolences to the family of Allison and Trevor Nika, the mother and daughter who were found murdered in their residence of Ross Corner. This news shook our community last week.
To that end, the Centerville Member of Parliament calls on residents to be a voice and speak out when crime or violence is afoot.
Madam Speaker, violence is never the right answer. And as best we can, we must always strive to be our brother's keepers. If we see or hear a crime, assault being committed, let us reach out to the Royal Bahamas Police Force and other stakeholders to save a life.
This past Monday, 23-year-old Blake Strawn of Ross Corner, he was charged for the double homicide of the Thompsons and was remanded to the Bahamas Department of Correctional Services until he returns to court on July 27th. As it relates to protection of women and their human rights in the Bahamas, Minister of Education, Technical and Vocational Training, Glenys Hannah Martin, also expressing her deep concerns about the recent homicides and violence against women in the Bahamas.
It's very, very concerning. This is a global phenomenon, and to see an increase in our own country, we've always had high levels, but to see this increase, at least in recent times, is very, very disturbing. This is something, I just happened to be reading a research piece by the World Health Organization, which was done in 2005, which speaks to this issue of gender-based violence. And I think it's something that, that we have to really ponder upon as a people, or violence on the whole, frankly, because we're seeing it in the schools, they're singing on the streets. And then you have this peculiar, very insidious thing of violence against women, or gender-based violence, which has very serious implications, because a lot of times it happens in the home, and it has just terrible implications. And so I think that the nation needs to reflect. I think a lot of it has to do with how women are viewed and the stereotypes associated with women, the continuing inequities in certain in our Constitution and elsewhere, and cultural perpetuations which suggest that women do not have equal placement in certain environments.
Earlier this week, the opposition Free National Movement Party held a press conference calling out the incumbent government on what they perceive to be a lack of urgency and prioritization in addressing matters of national concern, to which Minister Hannah Martin responded as follows.
Well, I spoke with the minister to find out the status of it, and it's in its final stages, and I think there's consultation that's going on, and then it will be brought. I believe that it's dealing with more issues than a straightforward issue, and that is why it's probably being shared now for consultation. But the legislation has to be brought, because the message has to be sent that these forms of violence are not acceptable, that there will be consequences, and we hope it will help to serve as a deterrent. But the root issue is the cultural reality of how women are viewed in this country and elsewhere, not by everyone, but by many. And this is what I believe to be one of the primary causes. And we have to get to the root of that, how the cultural reality. But the legislation is coming, from what I've been told.
As the Bahamas is scheduled to take part in the 4th cycle of the Human Rights Council Universal Periodic Review, where the Human Rights Council will review the Bahamas' fulfillment of United Nations human rights obligations and commitments, gender violence has taken center stage. And finally, in this segment, environmentalists are calling for the government to reconsider granting approvals for Royal Caribbean International, RCI's $100 million beach club project prior to completing environmental evaluations. The media joined environmentalists Wednesday morning on a tour of the proposed Crown land given to RCI on the western end of Paradise Island. Our Destiny Johnson has more in this next report.
The $100 million Beach Club project proposal by Royal Caribbean RCI, approved a little over a month ago, will be constructed on 4 acres of Crown land on Paradise Island. The approval announced last month by Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, who also holds responsibility for tourism investments and aviation, comes over a year after Prime Minister Philip Davis, while in opposition, expressed strong views against granting any Crown land leased to RCI. Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Clint Watson, defended the project and told reporters that this particular RCI proposal is entirely different scaled-down project than what PM Davis had originally disapproved of. On Wednesday, President and CEO of One Consultants, Eric Carey, took the media on a tour of the proposed site of the RCI project so that Bahamians could be able to get a glimpse of the parcel of Crown land that will be used for the project. He asserts that the land cannot handle the environmental pressures of construction and thousands of visitors each day.
The infrastructure that would be required for such a large number of people every day, every good day of the year, they're going to be over here. So we wanted you to look at it from that perspective. That's what I'm here talking about. And we want you to think about whether this last little piece of Crown land, which has the last piece of native vegetation that we walk through, the last piece of available public beach on Paradise Island, whether this should indeed be stressed and potentially destroyed by the type of development and the type of pressure that we're hearing about being proposed by the RCI proposed beach club.
Just last week, RCI leaders rebutted environmental concerns, insisting it would be their most environmentally friendly project of its kind, and they have a gold standard for protecting the environment. But Bahamian environmental activists beg to differ. Mr. Carey and Earth Care Executive Director Gail Woon demanding that the environmental impact assessments are made available to the public.
You'll see in in your environmental brief, RCI just last in 2022 was rated by Friends of the Earth. They basically were given Fs, failing grades, for their environmental stewardship. In the 90s and early 2000s, I mean, they were fined millions of dollars for dumping, right? So we hope that you've changed your ways. I mean, absolutely, and that you are adopting a gold standard. But again, what we're asking through our advocacy is to get a full understanding of what is proposed, to see in writing very clearly what this gold environmental standard looks like. And even if you're proposing gold environmental standard, how you're going to make that work on this tiny little narrow strip of the last little piece of crown land on Paradise Island.
To that end, Mr. Kerry, along with Ms. Woon, Executive Chairman of Save the Bays, Joseph Darville, Executive Director at Brief Casuarina McKinney Lambert, and Head of Waterkeepers, Rashima Ingram, released a joint statement last week which outlined the environmentalist requests and demands for public discourse and full transparency from the government and RCI.
Businesses have posed questions to the government and to the developer nearly a year ago, or more than a year ago, and have gotten no responses. We saw the media tour last week. We saw the hype. We're going to do this. We're going to have a gold standard. But, mouth can say anything. I mean, we want to see exactly what is proposed. We're standing on, as I said, a narrow strip of land that really it should not, and it cannot bear the environmental pressures of what is being proposed. So we want to see how anybody's going to work environmental magic to make that possible and, more importantly, sustainable. Just offshore the lighthouse, is Colonial Reef. It's a wonderful little reef, very healthy reef. 17 species of coral have been observed, and coral reefs are under stress. Coral reef, that doesn't need help going south. It needs help getting better, and so we're also concerned about that. They have talked about altering some little pocket beaches on this side of the island, on that rocky shore. What does that mean for the natural coastline? Altering the coastline is not a good thing to do. Go and look at Cable Beach and you can see what happened back in whenever that was, Joe, when Crystal Palace was first built right on the beach. That has not recovered.
Environmental activists contends that what RCI is proposing to do will destroy the last bit of native land on Paradise Island and attract tourists away from Bahamian vendors in downtown Nassau, who are still at this time struggling to make a living. They are calling the Davis administration to reconsider its approval of this project. For Jcn News, I'm Destiny Johnson.
Thanks so much for that report, Destiny. We'll take a break here, and we'll be right back after these commercials.